Something huge just dropped from the White House. It's a brand new report that's basically hitting the reboot button on America's entire approach to crypto. And believe me, this isn't just some small policy update. It's a major strategic pivot, and we're going to break down exactly what it means.
So that leads us to the big question, right? What does the crypto reset from the White House actually mean for the future of money and for America's place in it? The stakes here are incredibly high. So let's dive in and unpack the administration's new game plan.
Everything really kicks off with the language in this new executive order. And you got to notice the key words here. They're not talking about corporations or Wall Street. They're talking about individual citizens and doing so without persecution. That framing is really powerful. It makes access to public blockchains sound less like a financial product and more like a protected right.
Now, that executive order wasn't just a simple statement. It was basically a command. It set in motion this really comprehensive report, which is now the official blueprint for America's new national strategy on digital assets. This document right here, this is the game changer. If you want to understand why this is all happening right now, you just have to look at this timeline. The market, it went from these early experiments to a massive bull run. But then came 2022 and 2023, you had the FTX meltdown, followed by a really harsh regulatory crackdown. All that chaos? That's the direct reason we're seeing this reboot today. So first, let's look at how the report sees the problem. It frames this new policy as a hard fork, a really clean, decisive break from everything that came before.
And they didn't just pick that term out of a hat, Calling it a hard fork is a deliberate signal to the entire crypto world. It says this isn't just a little course correction. It's a commitment to a completely new set of rules, a whole new chain of policy that is, by design, incompatible with the old one.
And wow, the report is blunt when it talks about the past. It quotes two sitting SEC commissioners who called the old regulation by enforcement strategy a consequential mistake. This paints the old approach not just as, ineffective, but as something that was actively hurting American innovation.
So you get this really clear line in the sand. The report argues that the old way, with its hostile environment, was literally pushing talent and companies overseas. The new way? It's all about a pro-innovation mindset with a super clear goal: to make America the undisputed crypto capital of the world.
And this isn't just talk. The report brings the receipts. It points to the numbers. The U.S. share of global blockchain developers took a pretty big hit in just a couple of years. And this brain drain, the report basically lays it out as Exhibit A for the real, measurable cost of not having clear rules.
Okay, so how does the White House plan to reverse this trend? The blueprint they've laid out rests on three main pillars. And the first one is all about bringing some much-needed clarity to the market. A really huge concept here is tokenization. It's basically the idea of turning real-world assets, like stocks or real estate, into digital tokens on a blockchain. The report flags this as a massive opportunity, talking about a potential market of over $600 billion by 2030. You can think of it like upgrading the entire plumbing of the financial system. But to unlock that $500 billion plus potential, the industry desperately needs clear rules of the road. So this first pillar calls for regulators to finally answer all the big questions. Who's in charge? The SEC or the CFTC? How can new projects grow without constantly looking over their shoulder for lawsuits? And can we please get one national set of rules instead of this crazy patchwork of state laws? All right, next up, Pillar 2. And this is a big one because it's not just about crypto startups anymore. This is about plugging digital assets directly into the traditional mainstream banking system. And get this, a major policy U-turn is already happening. The strategy spells out the exact steps being taken to stop the so-called debanking of the crypto industry. They're reversing old accounting rules, pulling back discouraging statements, and basically telling bank examiners to stop giving banks a hard time just for working with legal crypto companies. Now, the forward-looking plan for banks is just as important. It calls for clear rules on everything from stablecoins to using public blockchains. But listen, two things here are absolutely huge. First, a major focus on private sector innovation, like tokenized deposits. And second, an explicit, outright prohibition on a government-run central bank digital currency, or CBDC. The final pillar, This one tackles what might be the trickiest issue in all of crypto. How do you balance national security with personal privacy and individual freedom?
The report's take on crime in crypto is, well, it's really nuanced. It absolutely acknowledges that bad guys use crypto and that the national security threat can be serious. But it also gives crucial context, that all that illicit stuff makes up only a tiny fraction of the overall market.
So, because they have this balanced view, their solution is kind of two-sided. On one hand, the goal is to protect core crypto principles, like your right to hold your own assets or the ability to build software without being unfairly targeted. But on the other hand, it calls for smarter tools for law enforcement and even support for new privacy-preserving technologies. The bet is that we can have both security and privacy.
So why does all of this really matter? What's the big picture here? Well, the report frames this entire reboot not just as economic policy, but as a critical battle for America's leadership on the world stage.
Here's exactly what's at stake. Right now, the US dollar is king. It underpins almost 60% of all global reserves and more than half of all global trade. But as money itself goes digital, the fundamental question becomes, can the dollar keep that top spot, or is it going to get left behind?
The report's answer is a definite yes. But, and this is a huge but, the strategy isn't to create a government-controlled digital dollar. Instead, the big bet is on privately issued dollar-backed stablecoins. The core idea is to let American innovation, not a government mandate, be the thing that secures the dollar's future.
So when you boil it all down, the report is setting up this global competition between two totally different models for the future of money. You've got the U.S. approach, championing private sector stablecoins built on values like liberty and privacy, and that's positioned directly against the competitor model, state-controlled digital currencies that, as the report warns, could be used for surveillance and control.
So there you have it. A bold new path has been laid out. The White House is making a huge bet that private innovation, guided by clear and fair rules, is the key to America's financial future. The question now is, will this blueprint launch a new era of American leadership, or could it unleash risks that we just can't predict yet? The answer is going to shape the future of money for all of us.